So this is our final research method. It's called content analysis. You are analysing the content of something. And you can learn about this method of studying the mass media. If you're going to study newspapers, TV shows, comics, magazines, movies, you're using what's called content analysis to understand when and how to use it, or the when, as it's the mass media, and develop our research skills. Yeah? Before we even start, just think about it. If you're studying newspapers, you can't give them questionnaires to fill in. If you're studying EastEnders, you can't do an interview. You have to use this method. Yeah? We're looking for prejudice and presumption. Pre is the prefix. Prejudice, you judge something before you know it. Presumption, you assume something before you know it. Yeah? And it's looking at, for this sort of bias, they often use content analysis for. Yeah? So let's start off with a very basic one. A few years ago, these two girls disappeared. Shannon Matthews, Madeleine McCann. Shannon was maybe a couple of years older than Madeleine. Yeah? For the first couple of weeks of their disappearances, the story was fairly identical. Two young girls had disappeared. No one knew what had happened to them. Yeah? Now, if you go over all the newspapers for that 2-week period, you discover there were 3 times as many stories written about Madeleine McCann as there were about Shannon Matthews. That's content analysis. Sociologists went through every single newspaper for that 2-week period and literally counted up the number of stories, the number of words, the number of photographs. They discovered, as a matter of fact, there were 3 times as many stories about Maddie as there were about Shannon. Yeah? So the question is, why the bias? One is, why is this story somehow more important than that story? Yeah? Talk about more in class. It needs to do, we probably to do with social class. Middle class, lower underclass. We'll talk about that more in the lessons. Yeah? So what is content analysis? It's a method of studying the mass media, like, let's say, newspapers, TV shows, comics. You count stuff like, well, female characters. So, for example, you'd say, I wonder how many female superheroes have breasts larger than their heads. Yeah? How are they depicted? Why has this girl got her bum out? Content analysis, you're analysing the content, not the plot, the images. Yeah? You're looking for certain bias, certain prejudice, certain images, certain stereotypes. You might read the text, not just the picture, looking for bias. Yeah? And of course you do this if you're doing the mass media. So that's basically it. You look at mass media, you count things. Like for EastEnders, you might count how many times different men or women make tea in the background. Yeah? It's not the plot, it's the background stuff. Yeah? Problem with it, you can't do any follow-up. You can't ask EastEnders questions about why it's mostly women making tea in the background rather than men.